UConn only needs Clingan to stop Edey. That should scare Purdue. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is sponsored by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions may apply. UConn only needs Donovan Clingan to stop Zach Edey. That's what I'm talking about today. Like me watching tonight, they will all be staying at home. What do I mean by that? There will be no need for UConn to come down and rake at the ball. No need to even double big to big like Jim Calhoun famously did to Duke's Elton Brand in the 1999 final. Purdue is more than Zach Edey. That's 100% true. They shoot 40% from three as a team, but for UConn to repeat as national champions, they have to limit Purdue's catch and shoot threes. Simple as that. And by not doubling Zach Edey, you accomplish that almost by default. So let's dive into that matchup. The Zach Edey versus Donovan Clingan, that's what everyone's going to want to be talking about going into tonight's game. And by the way, if you're just tuning in for the first time, give yourself a round of applause. I am so excited about this national title game. It's not just about Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan, but that is the main matchup, right? But I do think that what's interesting about this UConn versus Purdue is the first thing that popped into my head was I'm curious what these, the quote unquote experts think about the betting line, because I don't know if anyone knew this, but and I was probably today years old. Or not today, maybe a couple days ago, when I started to look at the betting lines for UConn, Alabama, Purdue, NC State. I started to look at the Ken Pom and the advanced stats. Like Ken Pom has had its website since I believe 1999, and so these advanced metrics is really what creates not 100%, but what's a guideline for these spreads. So I looked at the advanced stats on the UConn Purdue, and they're separated by about 4.5 to 6 points, depending on the way you look at it and how you perform it. So I think UConn's dominance in this tournament has pumped that spread up to 6.5 to 7.5. So if you're ever curious about why they do spreads or reason why it's so high, that's the reason why. So when people were saying that, this feels like a pick'em game, that may be true, but I think as you'll see when we get into positional battles, the big edge is UConn over Purdue on almost every position other than Donovan Clingan versus Zach Edey. And one can argue that they cancel each other out. So Zach Edey may get his 20 and 10. He may get 30. Donovan is a good defender, but much like Zach, he hasn't faced too many 7'4" traditional post players in his career. Not many people have. I think it's going to be weird for both players, to be completely honest, right? If anyone has played any type of sports, whether it's one-on-one, you're a fighter, one-on-one where you're a tennis player, baseball pitcher, when there's an abnormal sized human being across from you, you are more likely to be bothered by it. It's just human nature. I had one instance in my playing career where I faced a player. I'm talking tennis now. I'm 5'11" with shoes on. And this guy was a foot taller than me. 6'10", 6'11". It's arresting. It's weird. So when you face someone that's the same size, not a lot of guys in the tennis world are 6'10", 6'11". Not a lot of guys in basketball are even 7'4". There are pockets of these guys, right? So when they play each other, it's intriguing. So they both should relish this. It's not often that you play someone where you can chirp at each other and it's about each other's game versus them being, too small. But at the end of the day, UConn has shown that they have discipline to not allow those outlet passes. And I think that's going to be the difference. If Purdue wants Zach to go for 50, and they may only get 60, 62, 64 points, because if you don't allow, in 50, I'm being facetious, but if they want him to get a large number of points, you're really going to have to deal with lack of 3-point options, right? You can't let Zach go for a crazy amount plus Braden Smith, or plus Lance Jones, or plus Fletcher Lawyer, or plus Mason Gillis. If there's going to be a sidekick for UConn to win this game comfortably, it's got to be Trey Kaufman-Renn, because you guessed it, he's not a 3-point threat. If it's Kaufman-Renn and Zach Edey dominating the paint, and I use that word dominating loosely, but getting their points mostly within the 3-point arc, I think UConn lives with that. Because Purdue, where they have become elite this year, where they have really excelled, is they got better from the 3-point line. The year ago, when they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, they were a 26% 3-point shooting team. This year, they're 40%. So you could double Zach Edey indiscriminately, and you felt comfortable that they weren't going to hit enough threes to beat you. You just can't do that anymore. I want them to make their threes, if they get them, in transition or contested. If it's a contested 3-point game, UConn wins this game above that spread. And if they don't do that, then Purdue's going to win the game. I think that's the only danger, is if UConn doesn't follow this kind of plan of letting Zach and Donovan battle it out. If they do kind of have a different idea, which I would be shocked at, then it could get dicey. But that's why you game plan, because I believe the Huskies will shut down Purdue's 3-point shooting tonight. And that's essentially how you stop Zach Edey. You stop a great player by shutting down their supporting cast, because when a great player sees that their supporting cast also having success, that person gains confidence. If they see a supporting cast that is struggling, that is not getting what they want, then they have to, people can see this and say he's a great teammate or she's a great teammate, and they're like, yeah, don't worry about it, great job. But in your heart, if you're the alpha and the rest of your team is not following your lead, in your brain, in your heart and your brain, you're going, I got these guys here. The least they could do is get me over the top. If I'm not going to be able to do this all on my own, that's just the bottom line. So, and this is a big what if for all of UConn Nation is worried about Donovan getting in foul trouble. So let's put that aside for a second. What if Edey gets in foul trouble? How does Purdue manage that situation? They haven't been here all year. I think the most he's ever gotten in a game is 3 fouls against Nebraska. But if we lost Donovan, we're not done. If they lose Zach, they're screwed. Like, you can't paint me a picture where Zach Edey has to sit on the bench for an entire first half, or the majority of a first half, or gets a 4th foul early in the second half, and you don't see him to the end of the game, that Purdue is even sniffing the lead. Against State, they had a huge rebounding advantage. Don't see that happening here. They also turned the ball over a whopping 16 times against State. 16 turnovers. And State didn't take advantage. They shot 26% from 3, 36% overall. UConn is not NC State, guys. UConn faced a Bama team that shot 48% from 3 and 45% from 2, but only had 4 turnovers. And on a night, I didn't think that we shot great. We ended up shooting 50% from 2 and 40% from 3. If we shoot 50-40 and only turn the ball over 4 times, we 100% are hanging that 6 banner. I made a comment on Saturday that if you watch the first game, neither team looked like they belong in UConn's weight class. And I think that's still true. When UConn has a stretch where they go on a run, it may be early, it may be middle of the game, maybe late. There's a couple. Everyone knows about the 30-0 run with Illinois. But even the Alabama game, we closed that game out. It was 56-56 with 12:44 to go in that game. UConn closed on a 30-16 run. UConn will go on a run in this game. It may not happen late. It may happen like what happened with against Providence. Providence was up 19-9, came out with their hair on fire on senior night. That deficit turned into a 61-37 lead for UConn, a run of 52-18. We have been doing this all season. We're just doing it at different times and against different conferences now. So the Big Ten is going to get another taste of that. when we finish off the Boilermakers tonight. We'll dive into the individual matchups and the importance of each of them after this. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team and faster and for free. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions may apply. I wonder if Kentucky used LinkedIn to post their job. We'll get into that later. Just a little bit of just an interesting thing that we're seeing here is these positional battles. Obviously the interesting, we just went through Edey versus Kingan, and it's crazy to say this, but they likely cancel each other out. But I give the edge to Purdue in this one. As much as people want to paint me as a homer, UConn has created a homer out of me because of how great they've played this year. It's hard to be wrong with this team because they do so many things well. Zach should outscore Donovan and likely out-rebound him, but I think where they're matched up against each other, which is probably 95% of the time in this game, both will have some trouble because, as we talked about in the first segment, a lack of familiarity playing against a 7'3", 7'4" guy. I'm super excited to see how it plays out. Slight edge Purdue here with one caveat. If Donovan can get out and run like he did in the Alabama game, and Edey is chasing, could create some fatigue issues and also some foul trouble. But again, still a slight edge Purdue, all things being equal. Let's go to the point guard. Braden Smith versus Stephon Castle. With all due respect to Michael O'Connell and Jaden Taylor of NC State, y'all are not Stephon Castle. And if you saw that game, Braden Smith had a crazy amount of turnovers. I think he had 9 in that game. And if I'm overstating that, all I remember is him getting like multiple half-court violations over and back because they were able to push him back where he kind of like he used a dribble to kind of reset himself and almost like resetting the pocket in football. But he did it without awareness, and he got himself a backcourt violation. Not once, but twice. They really bothered him. He didn't shoot well. And Michael O'Connell isn't 6'5", 6'6". And by the way, Steph Castle is a legit 6'7". This is not a, he's wearing platform shoes, so, we're going to give him a couple extra inches. This dude is a legit 6'6". He's an NBA point guard. Braden Smith, while a fantastic college basketball player, is not an NBA player. And he is a fantastic catch and shoot guy. Braden Smith is impactful when teams worry about Zach Edey. If Dan Hurley says, we are going to cut the head off the dragon here, or cut the head off the snake, and let them try to figure out other ways to get the ball down low to Zach Edey. And by the way, I don't think this gets talked about enough. And I think if any college coaches listen to this, they're going to say thank you for this, because the amount of pressure that UConn puts on the ball when it comes to entry passes and the ability to kind of these little duck downs, UConn does a good enough job where it's not just easy to just kind of toss it into Zach. Where if they do want to double from time to time, I don't think we're going to do it on a regular basis. I just spent an entire segment talking about how they're not going to. They're going to stay at home. But if it's timed in the right way, just a quick, just to like when Hassan Diarra's in the game, I could see them jumping down really quick because he's got the quickness to get back on the player and give it still contest on threes. So that could be something to look at first. But pressure on entry passes. But I just think Braden Smith's life is going to be a absolute house of horrors up against Steph Castle, and then sprinkle a little Haas in there. And he'll quite literally never seen anything like it. Not with the speed and quickness of both those guys and the size of Steph. So big edge, I believe, to to Steph there. Tristen Newton and Fletcher Lawyer. I think Tristen can take him off the bounce and get Fletcher caught up in screens. But people forget, even if Purdue gets off to a hot start, playing defense against UConn's offense is exhausting. We saw Bama just absolute wear down. What was funny is on social media, they said that their transition game, their, up-tempo styles was what's going to wear down UConn. Ironically, it was UConn's sets and getting kind of bumped and back screened and kind of, tossed about when you're playing against UConn is what I think is going to be the end all be all when it comes to the end of the game. I think Tristen is going to do that to Fletcher. I think the edge UConn on ball handling and creativity. And if Tristen shoots well, huge edge. So I think it's just a straight up, check one edge on Tristen versus Fletcher Lawyer. Lance Jones was great against State. Him and Cam Spencer are going to go at it. Transfers, both hyper competitive. Both have been told by their coaches that they were the keys to their team's success this season in terms of their addition. I look at it as a draw, but only because I haven't seen Lance as much as I've seen Cam. So what I mean by that is I don't think Lance does as many things as Cam does. So draw in the sense of their ability or their teams counting on them. And I think Cam can do less and UConn can still win. Whereas I think Lance has to, be a double-digit scorer for Purdue to win this game. But Cam should have the overall edge as just a basketball player because of his ability to run the offense and pick and roll, especially when Sampson's in the game and he has the ability to kind of, bait defenses to come at him where then we get some lobs. So when it comes down to it, slight edge to Cam and his what he means to his team. I think Lance means the exact same thing to Purdue, but I think it becomes a big edge late as we start to wear Purdue down. Then you have Karaban versus Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think Alex has the edge overall, but inside, Kaufman-Renn should be able to take advantage. He's a bigger kid, has some pretty good post moves, gets in his bag a little bit down on the block. But overall edge has to be UConn. It's hard to chase Karaban around all game, so you may see an early edge to Kaufman-Renn just based off of his ability to post. But I don't see that happening late. I don't think they're going to be dumping it down to Kaufman-Renn in the middle of the second half because I think he's going to be exhausted running around trying to guard Karaban if they're going to play against each other. If they go without, Kaufman-Renn not against Karaban, if they try to put Cam on him or something like that, I just think Purdue's going to have to do some silly stuff to try to stop this UConn train. And I think that could be a key early, but it's over time. I think UConn's system is what lays the groundwork and they win. I think Purdue's bench is better overall, especially when you have a guy like Mason Gillis coming off the bench, who's a big time 3-point threat. So he gets that edge over Sampson and Jalen Stewart. Haas can be one or the other. He can be a really great 3-point threat, or he can struggle like he did in the semifinal. Purdue's overall bench is definitely better. I think UConn utilizes their bench strategically better with Haas, Sampson, and sometimes throwing Jalen in there. My X factor could be the play of both freshmen, though. UConn's Jalen Stewart and Purdue's Camden Heide. Both are great athletes, can shoot it well, and are itching for playing time. So if for some reason they're forced into action, I don't think the play drops off as much. So I think whoever's freshman plays better. If only one of them has to play because of foul trouble, then I think the edge goes to whichever team didn't have to play their freshman, right? So if Purdue is forced to put Camden in because of someone's ineffective or foul trouble, that's a big edge for UConn and vice versa. So to kind of recap it, I think Castle shuts down Braden Smith, huge edge for UConn. Lance Jones versus Cam Spencer, I think edge to UConn slightly. Jared Lawyer and Tristen Newton, I think the edge to UConn, maybe a big edge if Tristen has a big game. Zach Edey, edge Purdue. I think that's a slight edge, but I think you could trend towards big edge if Zach has a monster game over Donovan. Alex Karaban, edge over Trey Kaufman-Renn, just overall better player, does more. And I think the bench for Purdue. So as you can see, I think the spread is exactly where it needs to be because of this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think in normal games, Purdue has a large advantage at the center. That's not the case here. And then if you just go over all of the team, UConn is a total team. Purdue is a total team. UConn's just better. So I say all this, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of this on different networks. But are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to talk about Dan Hurley will be going for his second consecutive national championship. Why? Just because he may take a call from Kentucky, he won't be entertaining it. Listen, guys, we did an entire show, really mostly just the first and second segment on Dan Hurley to Kentucky. And I say this because I don't want UConn fans to freak out. This is a game for us to celebrate. And I'll get on my soapbox about why I think college basketball needs to change some of these stupid rules between transfer portals and coaches going here, coaches going there. They need to have some mandatory dead periods where it's about the games and it's about the analysis of the players and the teams that are being celebrated. I know everyone loves rumor mills. If you're an NFL guy, the NFL draft isn't always a conversation, but for us in college basketball here, what bothers me about this is UConn is going for back-to-back titles. And the biggest story of the day is Calipari to Arkansas. First off, can we talk about what a slap in the face it is to Kentucky that Calipari is not only leaving after talking to their AD and saying that he would stick around, but kind of looking at the lay of the land. I know he had some interest in Ohio State, but staying in conference to go to a rival. This is like very similar. We just had something happen like that in the Big East, and it makes me laugh. With Cooley going from Providence, who was it's a much better program currently, to a team that is a better historical program in Georgetown. It's the reverse here. I think Arkansas has been to the Elite Eight a couple times in the last 3-4 years. The Muss Bus took his talents to USC, and that Arkansas program opened up. I think what's interesting about this is the reason why, as it relates to UConn, is with having the best team in the country, with having the best coach in the country, every year you're going to have to deal with these rumors. Every year. I had someone in my YouTube comment said, if Kentucky wants Dan Hurley, they'll get Dan Hurley. That is just historically false. Guys, I know Kentucky can throw him Powerball money. I know they can. But if you haven't at least paid attention to who Dan Hurley is and where his roots are, Bob Hurley Sr. could have been a college coach. Easily. Do you know how good of a high school coach you have to be a Hall of Famer? So his father used to be a part-time I want to say it's not security guard, but basically they worked as a guard at a correctional facility, right? So you're trying to tell me that a guy who saw this growing up is just going to go for money? Because Kentucky, for all of their history, is a dumpster fire. And what I mean that, it's because of the toxic nature of their fan base. You think UConn fans are obnoxious? Kentucky fans make the Bama fans in my mentions over the weekend look like, nursery rhymes. Look, Dan Hurley is not going to Kentucky. Don't get it twisted. I have a good job. If someone called me to entertain a position with a lot more money, I'm always going to listen to a phone call, entertaining it, going to my family and having a true discussion. Because even if I mention it to my wife, she may go, "Oh, that's a lot more money than we usually make." But then if I said, "Yeah, but if we don't do well, we could get fired in a year," or if we don't do well, they're going to post pictures of you on here and say nasty and disgusting things about you, or if we, if we get to a Final Four and I lose, we may get some death threats or issues like that. Do you really think that Andrea Hurley is going to sign off on that? Billy Donovan famously considered Kentucky after the Florida run before he went to the NBA. And his wife told him, if you take the Kentucky job, you will be going alone. Now, I have no idea if Billy Donovan is still with his wife, and I don't care. But what I do know is that when you're in a family that has children, you're married, you're committed to your family, you're also committed. You also make a commitment to your team. And I know coaches break those commitments all the time. You see it at the mid-major level. You see it at the Power 5 level. You see it at the high major level. But it would be unprecedented for one blue blood to lose a coach to another coming off of a back-to-back title like this. And I just don't see Dan Hurley, who struggled with should he leave URI for UConn, for him to then take this huge leap of faith that he's going to be as successful at Kentucky. He certainly would be able to get more, better quote unquote talent. But how's that worked out for Kentucky? I know that there's a lot of people out there that look at ego, and there's no doubt that Dan Hurley has an ego, because how could you not when you're this good? But like anything, I think some of that is going to be put in check. If by some weird way UConn was to lose tonight, I think there's a better chance that he does entertain it, like truly entertain it. Because if they win tonight, winning 2 is amazing. But why not win a third? Why not go back to back to back? I think what's interesting is I guarantee you that'll be his thought process if they win the title tonight, or I should say when. Yeah, don't worry about it. I will tell you to worry about. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now also is available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now and available on the free Fire TV channels app. Listen, before I go, this has been an incredible privilege and honor to kind of come into this season late, start this podcast with you guys, and it's not going anywhere. I will be on tomorrow, and I will be on tonight live, win, lose, or draw, and likely we'll have multiple podcasts throughout the week. And if we win, when we win, hopefully we'll have some really great guests to talk about how special this season is. And hopefully we will not be talking about Dan Hurley going anywhere, because we shouldn't. The last thing I will say is college basketball should 100% start a legislative body that oversees how ridiculous it is that the biggest story of the day is someone leaving or transfer portal. They should have 100% the ability to control this. You can have rumors all you want. Such and such is going here. Someone entered the transfer portal. Cool. Well, the transfer portal doesn't officially open until tomorrow. That's what it should be. And you can't hire or fire anyone until tomorrow, because that is how you control narratives, how you control a sport. So then now the entire month of April leading up to the NFL draft would be about college basketball. The amount of movement that we would get, the amount of eyeballs on which coaches are going where. You could call it, they call it Black Monday in the NFL. Just call it, Black Tuesday, where all these guys are going to get fired. They may already know but you don't get it announced. You can't announce it until midnight tonight. That would be my answer to all of this. So then that way, all the coaches can focus on coaching and getting all their affairs in order. Same thing with the players. Nothing is official until tomorrow. So anyway, that's me on my soapbox. Doesn't matter. We're in a different world now. UConn going for back-to-back. I love it. I'm going to have a hard time concentrating all day, but I'll be here. Stay locked in. Stay connected. Make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies. Do you see how nervous I was? Because that's not the outro. That's the intro. So let's try that again. Go Huskies.